Welcome to Globewise Entertainment, your ultimate destination for movies, Hollywood stories, and timeless cinema gems. Today, we're diving into the horror movies that defined the 80s, the slashers, the screamers, and the spine-chilling classics that forever changed the genre. From blood-soaked cult favorites to box office legends, these films didn't just scare audiences, they shaped an entire decade of horror. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to Globewise Entertainment for more deep dives into the movies you love. And tell us in the comments, which 80s horror classic terrified you the most? 1. The Evil Dead. In 1981, a low-budget indie film crept into theaters and changed horror forever. The Evil Dead. What started as a student project by a young Sam Raimi and his friend Bruce Campbell turned into one of the most terrifying and revolutionary horror films of the decade. The story is deceptively simple. A group of friends heads to a lonely cabin deep in the woods, where they stumble upon an ancient book, the Necronomicon. With one reading, an unspeakable evil is unleashed, and what follows is pure nightmare fuel. But here's where The Evil Dead became legendary. Raimi's inventive camera work, gruesome practical effects, and relentless tension pushed boundaries few dared to cross. Audiences weren't just watching horror, they felt trapped in that cabin, surrounded by the Deadites. Despite its shoestring budget, the film shocked censors, got banned in several countries, and even earned the title of a video nasty in the UK. Yet, that controversy only fueled its cult status, turning it into one of the most talked-about horror films of the 80s. Most importantly, The Evil Dead launched the careers of Raimi and Campbell, later giving rise to sequels like Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, and even a TV revival. Its influence can still be seen in modern horror, from Cabin in the Woods to Hereditary. The Evil Dead didn't just scare audiences, it redefined what horror could be in the 80s, raw, shocking, and unforgettable. If you love classic horror and want to explore more terrifying stories from the 80s, make sure to hit subscribe. Which horror movie from the 80s still haunts your nightmares? Drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear your scariest picks. 2. The Lost Boys. A cult vampire classic. In 1987, Joel Schumacher unleashed a stylish horror film that didn't just redefine vampires, it reshaped an entire generation's view of horror. The Lost Boys wasn't your typical gothic vampire tale. Instead, it brought fangs, leather jackets, motorcycles, and rock and roll right into the neon-soaked streets of 1980s California. The story follows two brothers, Michael and Sam, who move with their mother to the coastal town of Santa Carla, infamously nicknamed the murder capital of the world. Almost immediately, Michael is drawn into the orbit of a mysterious biker gang led by the charismatic David, played brilliantly by Kiefer Sutherland. But this isn't just any gang, they're vampires, preying on the town's youth and hiding in plain sight. What made The Lost Boys different and unforgettable was its blend of horror, comedy, and teen rebellion. It was equal parts scary and cool, giving audiences leather-clad vampires who felt more like a dangerous rock band than dusty old monsters from folklore. The movie dripped with 80s attitude, loud music, wild fashion, and a gritty yet glamorous aesthetic that made it instantly iconic. The film also gave us some of the most memorable vampire imagery in cinema history, from the eerie boardwalk scenes to the unforgettable line, "Sleep all day. Party all night. Never grow old. Never die. It's fun to be a vampire." This wasn't just a horror movie, it was a lifestyle fantasy. And let's not forget the Frog Brothers, self-proclaimed vampire hunters who added just the right amount of humor and camp, making The Lost Boys accessible to both hardcore horror fans and casual audiences. Over time, the movie became a cultural touchstone. It influenced fashion, inspired future vampire stories like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Twilight, and cemented itself as one of the definitive horror films of the 80s. Even today, its soundtrack, cast, and one-liners keep it alive in horror fan circles worldwide. The Lost Boys wasn't just about vampires, it was about youth, rebellion, and the dangerous allure of immortality. And that's why it didn't just define horror in the 80s, it defined cool. If you're a fan of stylish horror that blends thrills with teen angst and unforgettable music, The Lost Boys deserves a place on your must-watch list. It's more than a vampire film, it's a piece of 80s history. 3. Re-Animator. Cult classic of mad science and madness. In the neon-soaked era of the 80s, horror films pushed boundaries like never before, and Re-Animator stood at the front lines of this fearless movement. Directed by Stuart Gordon and based on H.P. Lovecraft's tale, the movie introduced audiences to Dr. Herbert West, a brilliant but dangerously obsessed medical student with one mission: to conquer death itself. Armed with a glowing green serum that could reanimate corpses, West's experiments spiraled into shocking chaos. What began as scientific ambition soon turned into a grotesque nightmare of undead mayhem, torn bodies, and twisted humor. Unlike many horror films of the decade, Re-Animator wasn't just about scares, it was about shocking audiences with outrageous gore, dark comedy, and audacious storytelling. The film quickly became a cult classic, not only for its jaw-dropping practical effects and unforgettable performances but also for its fearless blending of horror and satire. It proved that 80s horror wasn't just about slashers lurking in the shadows, it was about bold creativity that left audiences laughing one moment and gasping the next. Even today, Re-Animator stands as one of the most daring and unforgettable horror films of the 80s, a true example of how the decade defined and redefined the entire genre. If Re-Animator taught us anything, it's that horror in the 80s was unafraid to go wild, weird, and unforgettable. But what about you? Would you dare take Herbert West's serum, or leave the dead to rest? Let us know in the comments below. For They Live. In the late 1980s, John Carpenter shocked audiences with a film that blended sci-fi horror, social commentary, and pure 80s rebellion, They Live. The story follows a drifter named Nada, played by wrestling legend Roddy Piper, who stumbles upon a strange pair of sunglasses. But these aren't just any glasses. When he puts them on, the world changes forever. Through the lenses, Nada sees the horrifying truth: aliens disguised as humans are secretly ruling the world. Billboards scream subliminal commands like obey, consume, conform, and stay asleep. The wealthy and powerful are exposed as extraterrestrial overlords feeding off humanity's blind obedience. At first, no one believes him, until Nada wages an underground war against the hidden rulers. What follows is a mix of paranoia, explosive shootouts, and one of the most iconic fight scenes in film history, where Nada and his friend Frank brawl for nearly 6 minutes straight over putting on the sunglasses. But They Live isn't just action, it's a warning. Carpenter cleverly disguised a critique of consumer culture, media control, and corporate greed inside a horror sci-fi shell. It terrified audiences not with monsters or gore, but with the realization that maybe this wasn't just fiction. With its chilling premise, unforgettable one-liners like, "I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum," and its fearless political edge, They Live became more than a horror movie. It became a cultural wake-up call. Even today, the film feels relevant, making it a true 80s horror classic that continues to haunt minds and spark conversations worldwide. They Live proved that horror could be entertaining while also thought-provoking, leaving audiences questioning the systems around them. It's not just a movie, it's a mirror to society, making it one of the most defining horror films of the 80s. 5. Creepshow. In 1982, horror fans were treated to something they had never seen before, a wild, chilling, and wickedly funny anthology that blurred the line between comic books and cinema. Creepshow, directed by the legendary George A. Romero and written by none other than Stephen King, wasn't just a horror movie, it was an experience. The film played like a living, breathing comic book, with its bold colors, stylized panels, and supernatural stories that felt ripped straight from pulp horror magazines of the 1950s. Each of its 5 tales delivered a perfect mix of campy fun and spine-tingling terror. From the eerie tale of a father returning from the grave to demand his Father's Day cake, to the unforgettable segment, The Crate, where a monstrous creature hidden in a box unleashes pure carnage, every story was dripping with twisted morality. But what made Creepshow truly iconic was its ability to mix dark humor with genuine horror. It gave audiences a deliciously guilty pleasure, scaring them one moment and making them laugh the next. And with its star-studded cast, including Hal Holbrook, Adrienne Barbeau, Leslie Nielsen, and even Stephen King himself in a bizarre, unforgettable role, the film became an instant cult classic. More than just another horror flick, Creepshow defined 80s horror by proving that the genre could be both terrifying and fun, stylish yet shocking. It sparked a whole wave of horror anthologies that tried to copy its magic, but none quite captured its unique blend of gore, humor, and comic book flair. Even today, fans revisit Creepshow for that nostalgic shiver, the neon glow of the comic panels, the chilling laughter of the creep, and the reminder that horror isn't just about nightmares, it's also about having a devilishly good time. Would you dare open the crate? Or would you risk it all for Father's Day cake? Tell us your favorite Creepshow story in the comments. 6. The Shining. In 1980, visionary director Stanley Kubrick unleashed a film that would forever redefine psychological horror, The Shining. Adapted from Stephen King's novel, the movie follows Jack Torrance, a struggling writer who takes his family to the remote Overlook Hotel for the winter, hoping isolation will bring him inspiration. But instead of peace, the hotel's haunted corridors awaken something terrifying inside him. As snow traps the family, Jack spirals into madness, consumed by the dark forces of the Overlook. His wife Wendy and young son Danny, who possesses a psychic gift known as the Shining, must survive as Jack's descent turns violent. With unforgettable imagery, the blood-soaked elevators, the ghostly twins, and Jack Nicholson's chilling "Here's Johnny." The film terrified audiences and cemented itself as one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Though initially divisive with critics, The Shining has since become a cultural phenomenon, inspiring countless parodies, theories, and even a sequel decades later. More than just a horror film, it's a masterpiece of atmosphere, dread, and psychological terror that defined horror in the 80s and continues to haunt audiences worldwide. If you enjoyed this breakdown of The Shining, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more timeless horror classics, and let us know in the comments. Do you think Jack Torrance was controlled by the hotel, or was the madness always within him? 7. Return of the Living Dead. In the summer of 1985, horror fans thought they had seen every kind of zombie imaginable, until Return of the Living Dead crashed onto the screen like a punk rock nightmare. Unlike the slow-moving corpses George A. Romero made famous, this movie gave audiences something far more terrifying: zombies that couldn't be killed by bullets to the brain, that screamed for one thing only: brains. The story begins in a medical supply warehouse where two employees accidentally release a deadly gas from a secret government canister. The gas seeps into a nearby cemetery, and soon the dead are clawing their way out of their graves. What follows is a wild mix of dark comedy, over-the-top gore, and a killer punk rock soundtrack that turned the film into an instant cult classic. But what really set Return of the Living Dead apart was its boldness. It broke all the rules of the zombie genre. Zombies ran, talked, and couldn't be stopped. It terrified audiences while making them laugh at the absurdity of it all. The movie captured the rebellious, counterculture energy of the 80s perfectly, with neon lighting, outrageous characters, and a chaotic atmosphere that felt like a midnight party gone wrong. And let's not forget one of the most unforgettable moments in horror history, Trash's cemetery dance scene, a sequence that blended shock, sexuality, and pure 80s punk energy into one iconic image. Even today, Return of the Living Dead is remembered not just as a horror film, but as a cultural phenomenon that redefined zombies for a new generation. It paved the way for horror comedies and influenced countless films, TV shows, and even video games that followed. Return of the Living Dead wasn't just another zombie flick, It was a bold, outrageous experiment that proved horror could be terrifying, hilarious, and rebellious all at once. If you grew up in the 80s, this was the movie that made you laugh, scream, and maybe even check your backyard for zombies. Which scene from this cult classic still haunts you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more horror stories that shaped a generation. Gremlins. When Gremlins hit theaters in 1984, audiences expected a cute holiday movie with a cuddly creature at its center. What they got instead was one of the most twisted, hilarious, and terrifying Christmas nightmares ever put on screen. The story begins in the quiet little town of Kingston Falls, where a struggling inventor buys his son a strange Christmas gift, a fuzzy little creature called a mogwai. With his wide eyes, soft fur, and gentle purrs, Gizmo instantly captured hearts. But the rules that came with him were the real hook. Don't get him wet. Don't expose him to bright light. And never, ever, feed him after midnight. Of course, in true 80s horror comedy fashion, those rules are broken. And when they are, the sweet mogwai spawns an army of twisted, reptilian monsters, gremlins, who turn the holiday season into pure chaos. They wreck homes, terrorize families, and cause mayhem everywhere, from bars to movie theaters. What made Gremlins so iconic wasn't just its blend of horror and comedy, it was the fact that it felt dangerous yet playful. Audiences didn't know whether to laugh or scream, and kids who begged their parents to see it came out both delighted and traumatized. The film pushed boundaries so far that it helped spark the creation of the PG-13 rating, forever changing Hollywood. It wasn't just another creature feature, it was a cultural event that blurred the lines between holiday cheer and holiday fear. Even today, Gremlins stands tall as a perfect slice of 80s horror, part monster movie, part comedy, and part Christmas classic. And let's be honest, Gizmo still remains one of the most beloved little monsters in movie history. 9. Fright Night. In the neon glow of the 1980s, horror wasn't just about masked killers and slasher bloodbaths. Sometimes, it was about what might be lurking right next door. Fright Night, 1985, captured that very fear. The story follows Charlie Brewster, your typical suburban teenager who suddenly becomes convinced that his new neighbor is no ordinary man. He's a vampire. At first, no one believes him. His friends laugh, his girlfriend dismisses it, and even the police roll their eyes. But when the bodies start piling up and the truth becomes undeniable, Charlie realizes he's in way over his head. Desperate, he turns to Peter Vincent, a washed-up TV horror host who makes a living pretending to hunt monsters on late-night shows. But when fiction collides with reality, both Charlie and Peter are forced to confront an ancient evil that thrives on fear. What made Fright Night stand out wasn't just the fangs or the jump scares. It was its perfect mix of humor, heart, and terrifyingly good special effects. The practical makeup and transformations were groundbreaking for their time, giving the movie a cult status that horror fans still celebrate today. This wasn't just another vampire flick, it was a love letter to horror itself. A reminder that evil could hide behind the most ordinary doors, and that sometimes, the scariest things are the ones we can't convince anyone else to believe in. Fright Night wasn't just a vampire movie, it was a clever blend of 80s teen drama, supernatural terror, and horror comedy that redefined what audiences expected from the genre. Even today, it's a cult classic that horror fans and filmmakers continue to revisit for inspiration. 10. Friday the 13th. The birth of a legend. On a quiet summer night in 1980, audiences sat in dark theaters, unaware they were about to witness the birth of one of horror's most iconic franchises. Friday the 13th wasn't just another slasher. It was a cultural shockwave that changed horror forever. Set at Camp Crystal Lake, the film begins with innocent fun, teenagers preparing to reopen a camp with a dark past. But one by one, their laughter fades into screams. A hidden figure stalks them through the woods, turning the summer retreat into a nightmare. Unlike other horror films of the time, Friday the 13th dared to mix brutal suspense with shocking twists. The infamous finale, where the true killer is revealed, left audiences in absolute disbelief. And just when viewers thought it was safe to breathe, the final jump scare catapulted them out of their seats. With a shoestring budget and raw intensity, the movie didn't just scare audiences, it rewrote the rules of the slasher genre. Its success gave birth to sequels, merchandise, and of course, the hockey mask-wearing Jason Voorhees, an image that would forever haunt pop culture. Friday the 13th wasn't just a movie, it was a phenomenon. It defined the 80s horror boom, terrified millions, and proved that sometimes the scariest nights happen when you least expect them. 11. Child's Play. In the late 1980s, horror fans thought they'd seen it all: slashers, haunted houses, demons, and masked killers. But Child's Play introduced a new kind of nightmare, one that blended childhood innocence with pure terror. The story follows young Andy Barkley, a sweet boy who only wants one thing for his birthday: a good guy doll, the most popular toy on the market. His mother, Karen, manages to buy one from a street vendor at a bargain price. Andy is overjoyed, but what neither he nor his mother knows is that this particular doll carries a horrifying secret. Inside the smiling plastic face of Andy's doll lives the soul of Charles Lee Ray, a sadistic serial killer who used a voodoo ritual to transfer his spirit into the toy before dying. What begins as innocent playtime soon turns into a chilling nightmare. Andy's beloved companion, Chucky, comes to life with a foul mouth, sinister laugh, and a deadly agenda. The horror escalates as Chucky leaves a trail of bodies, and Andy is the only one who knows the truth. But who would believe that a child's doll could commit murder? The tension builds until Karen and Detective Mike Norris must face Chucky head-on in a terrifying showdown that would cement the doll as one of horror's most iconic villains. Child's Play wasn't just another slasher film, it was a cultural shift. By combining supernatural possession with something as innocent as a child's toy, the movie tapped into deep psychological fears. It blurred the line between comfort and terror, making audiences question the very objects sitting in their children's bedrooms. Chucky's wisecracking personality and relentless pursuit of Andy created a new horror icon, one that stood shoulder to shoulder with Freddy, Jason, and Michael Myers. Unlike most slashers, Child's Play spawned an entire franchise that evolved with the times: sequels, spin-offs, a reboot, and even a hit TV series. The film defined 80s horror because it dared to be original. It gave birth to one of the most recognizable villains in cinema and ensured that "Wanna Play" would never sound the same again. And that's the story of Child's Play, a film that proved even children's toys could become vessels of pure terror. If you grew up in the 80s, did Chucky scare you as much as Freddy or Jason? Or did you secretly want a good guy doll of your own? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget, if you're enjoying this countdown of 80s horror classics, hit that like button, subscribe to Globewise Entertainment, and click the bell so you don't miss the next terrifying chapter. 12. Poltergeist. The Haunted Suburbia. In the early 80s, when American suburbs were booming with the dream of white fences and cozy homes, Steven Spielberg and Tobe Hooper shattered that dream with Poltergeist. What looked like the perfect family's new home quickly turned into one of the most terrifying battlegrounds between the living and the dead. The film follows the Freeling family, whose seemingly normal suburban house becomes possessed by vengeful spirits. At first, it's playful, a moving chair, flickering lights. But then the darkness escalates as their youngest daughter, Carol, is pulled into another dimension, whispering the now iconic line, "They're here." What made Poltergeist legendary wasn't just the bone-chilling scares or groundbreaking special effects. It was how it attacked the very heart of safety. The house, once a sanctuary, became a nightmare. Every suburban family suddenly wondered, what if our home was built on something sinister? Behind the scenes, Poltergeist carried an eerie curse of its own. Strange accidents and tragic deaths of cast members led many to believe the film itself was haunted, a chilling layer that boosted its cult status. By mixing family drama, supernatural horror, and cutting-edge effects, Poltergeist didn't just scare audiences, It redefined 80s horror. It proved that terror could hide right under your roof, in the place you feel safest. Even today, Poltergeist is more than just a movie, it's a haunting reminder that the ghosts of the past are never too far away. Third, John Carpenter's The Thing. The ultimate horror of paranoia. In the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, a small group of scientists stumbles upon a nightmare older than humanity itself. A shape-shifting alien, buried beneath the ice for over 100,000 years, awakens, and with it comes a terror unlike anything the world had ever seen. John Carpenter's The Thing wasn't just another creature feature. It was a slow-burning descent into paranoia, where trust dissolved faster than the ice under their boots. Anyone could be the monster. The man sitting beside you, the friend you've known for years, even the dog wagging its tail in the corner, it could all be The Thing. When it first hit theaters in 1982, the film shocked audiences. The grotesque practical effects by Rob Bottin, twisting flesh, splitting heads, bodies transforming into unspeakable horrors, were both groundbreaking and horrifying. Critics at the time were unsettled, calling it too gory, too bleak. But horror fans knew better. Over the years, The Thing clawed its way from cult classic to one of the greatest horror films of all time. Its influence spread far beyond the 80s. Filmmakers, writers, and gamers borrowed its themes of mistrust and isolation. The claustrophobic fear that no one is who they seem still echoes in modern horror and science fiction. The Thing wasn't just about a monster, it was about the darkness within us all. And that's why this icy, blood-soaked masterpiece rightfully earns its place among the horror movies that defined the 80s. 14. An American Werewolf in London. Picture this, two carefree American backpackers, David and Jack, wandering the misty English countryside. Their adventure feels exciting, almost dreamlike, until they stumble into the wrong place at the wrong time. Ignoring the ominous warnings of locals, they cut across the moors under a pale full moon. That's when it happens, the bone-chilling growls, the snapping of jaws, and a blur of fur tearing through the night. Jack is savagely killed, and David is bitten, forever marked by a curse older than time itself. What follows is a haunting blend of horror and tragedy. David struggles with terrifying visions, gruesome nightmares, and ghostly visits from his dead friend Jack, who warns him of what's to come. He will transform into a werewolf and kill innocent people. And then comes the moment no audience of the 80s could ever forget, the groundbreaking transformation scene. David writhes in agony as his body cracks, stretches, and reshapes into a beast, captured in practical effects so realistic that it earned the film the very first Academy Award for Best Makeup. But beneath the terror lies something deeply human. It's the story of a man torn between love, destiny, and the monster inside him, a film that fused dark humor with heart-stopping horror in a way no one had seen before. An American Werewolf in London didn't just scare audiences, it redefined what horror could look like in the 80s. A chilling masterpiece that still howls through cinema history. 15. A Nightmare on Elm Street. In the mid-80s, horror fans thought they had seen it all, slasher villains with knives, masks, and endless chase sequences. But then came Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street, a movie that blurred the line between dreams and reality and redefined fear for an entire generation. The story introduces us to Freddy Krueger, not just another silent masked killer, but a sadistic villain with a twisted sense of humor. What made Freddy terrifying wasn't just his glove of blades, it was the fact that he stalked his victims in their dreams. You could run, you could hide, but eventually, everyone has to sleep. And once you closed your eyes, Freddy was waiting. The film captured teenage anxieties in a way no horror movie had done before. Sleepovers became tense, nightmares felt a little too real, and the idea that even your bed wasn't safe terrified audiences across the globe. Beyond its scares, A Nightmare on Elm Street also launched the career of a young actor named Johnny Depp, whose infamous death scene remains one of the most shocking in horror history. This wasn't just another 80s slasher, it was a cultural phenomenon that spawned countless sequels, merchandise, Halloween costumes, and even inspired the way horror films were made for decades. Freddy Krueger became an icon, standing tall alongside Dracula and Frankenstein as one of the greatest horror creations ever. Even today, nearly 40 years later, the film still crawls into our subconscious, whispering a chilling reminder: whatever you do, don't fall asleep. If A Nightmare on Elm Street kept you awake at night back in the 80s, or if Freddy still haunts your dreams, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to hit that like button if you dare to watch horror before bed. And that wraps up our deep dive into the horror movies that define the 80s, a decade that forever changed the genre with unforgettable slashers, chilling supernatural tales, and cult classics that still haunt us today. If you enjoyed this trip back into horror history, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to Globewise Entertainment for more thrilling journeys into cinema's past. Now it's your turn. Which 80s horror movie scared you the most or left the biggest mark on you? Drop your pick in the comments below. We love hearing your stories. Until next time, stay spooky, stay entertained, and keep watching Globewise Entertainment.